All right. Hey, welcome
Hey,
to
John.
Hi. W- Welcome to TSG Live Talking Trains. I'm John here and coming to you live from the TSG Intergalactic headquarters. And
And
we
I
have
am Murph, coming
yeah,
from beautiful downtown Boulder Creek.
yeah, from Murph's Intergalactic headquarters, the award-winning co-host,
That's
also
true. It's over
yeah,
that way.
winner of the prestigious Guillermo Award.
That's right.
And boy, we haven't done this since about a month ago, and we're at it
Yeah,
again, right?
we've got to stop meeting like this.
Yeah,
We need to be live together. So,
yeah, every third Wednesday of the month we do this Talking Trains show, and we talk about train stuff, and we have a really fun show, I think, together today. We're not in the same room, Murph, but our guests, the featured guests, will be when they come on.
it's
And these
true.
guys are just a bundle of fun. I had a time or a chance, I should say, to hang out with these guys when we did the railroading hand signals video a couple months ago, or maybe a few months ago. And it was a lot of fun. So we're going to be talking about prototype railroad stuff. And between these two guys, they have something like 85 years of experience on the railroad. So that should be fun.
Yep.
Anyway, but before we do that, we're going to bring up my other friend, John Zock, who's one of the board members. Well, actually, you know what? I'm thinking about it. Well, let's just bring him up. John might actually be the president. Let's just find out from him. Hi, John.
Hi.
Are
Hello,
you the president or are you a board of directors member?
Chairman.
Chairman. Okay.
Yeah,
That means you open all the chairs for everybody?
pretty much. Yeah,
Okay.
or fold them up when they get them. I get tired of hearing them. I just fold them up and throw them out the room. So
Oh, that
we'll figure
works.
that out.
So
Yeah.
John's the chairman of the Tuolumne Historical Railroad Association. Sydney and I are founding members, and there's something really exciting. Well, we're really excited about it because the THRA has been around now for what, 3 years or something like
Three and a
that?
half years.
3.5 years. And we have been wanting and wanting and wanting and wanting to do a steam excursion, and we're finally getting to do it. So it's the first ever THRA steam excursion. I'm excited, John. I'm sure you're
Good.
excited. Why don't
Yeah.
we tell people about it? I'll bring up our little
Okay.
presentation.
Well,
It's
I'm
a
going to
very, yeah.
give a little bit of background of how we got to the THRA, and then we'll get
Okay,
into the event.
sure. Tell me when you're ready for the information about the excursion, and we'll do
Okay.
that.
I'll let you know.
Yeah.
But the first part's not a problem. So actually, THRI became a nonprofit on April 1st. That was kind of a nervy thing, April 1st, but that was April 1st of 2022. The THRI mission is to preserve, enhance, and interpret the rich history of railroads in Tuolumne County, the Sierra Railroad, West Side Lumber Company, Pickering Lumber Company, and Hetch Hetchy. THA will sponsor various projects and events for the benefit of Tuolumne County, the railroad, and the community and the public. Prior to the THRA, we had seminars for 11 years on a Sunday, either in April or May, starting May the 2nd of 2009. In the last 8 years, we've teamed up with the West Side Union Group on their Saturdays and us on Sundays for a weekend event. In the last 2 years, the weekend train event has been held at Black Oak Casino in Tuolumne City. For those 2 years, THRA has had a banquet dinner on Saturday with video programs on the West Side and the Pickering. Next year, the West Side reunion will be on the 18th of April, and the THRA seminar will be on April the 19th at Black Oak Casino again. And the banquet will be on the 18th. Now we're going to get into the presentation, so we can go
Oh,
ahead and show that.
okay. Let me bring that up real quick.
And it's, as you can see there, it's the Preservation Summit Limited, and it'll be the first steam train event that will be held on February the 26th, as indicated. Although they say the 25th, it is the 26th because it's Friday.
Hold on a second. You said February, and I'm pretty sure that's not exactly.
No, September.
Yeah, there's a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, on the 26th this year, 2025. The Sierra number 3, the historical movie star locomotive which was built in 1891, will be the locomotive of the event. And the event will start at 5:30. You can maybe scroll down a little bit on that.
Well,
give us.
I'm not able to scroll, but we can certainly advance it to here.
Okay, there you go. So the 5:30 at the Railtown 1897 picnic grounds will have a social hour, Black Irish band playing railroad songs and movie themes. There'll be refreshments at a cash bar with beer and wine, with soft drinks and water, and there will be a tour of the roundhouse in that 5:30 to 6:15 type of area. The catering buffet dinner will start at 6:15, not the 6:30, but the menu will be barbecue chicken, barbecue baby back ribs, a garden salad with 2 dressings, potatoes greatness hits, and the best part, the dessert, is a chocolate mousse.
Oh,
that's the part I like. Okay, and you can, once the dinner's over, you can, if you still have wine and beer, you can take those onto the train.
Ooh.
Okay. You won't be able to buy them on the train, but you'll be able to drink it on the train. The train will depart at 7:30 to Rock Siding, and on the return, we'll actually run about a half a mile up towards Sonora, which is more than usual time frame for doing that, and then back down to Rock Siding, and then finally back to Railtown Depot at 9 o'clock. So it's going to be about an hour and a half worth of train rides going down and back up. The cars will be open seating, coach 14. Number 599 is an open air car, and the Sierra number 7 caboose will also be available. And first come, first serve gets to know where you want to sit. If it's nice outside, the open air one is the ideal one because you get a lot of fresh air and you can see better out the windows. Getting into the prices, they don't really tell you that, but I give you that information right now. The prices for the event for adults are $80 per person. For members of the THRA, membership for the THRA is only $35, so you get other benefits by joining the membership, and $90 if you're not a member. You can order tickets online on the THRA website using www.tuolumnerailroad.org, which is up there someplace, and there's right there, and click on the event page, then scroll down to the excursion train page, click on it, and you'll give you all the information that you need and details that you need to get your purchase. There actually will be a purchase ticket site, that will give you the step-by-step process for your purchases. If you want, you can order by ticket by email. There's another link below the purchase ticket link. Just follow it and it'll give you the process to mail your tickets ordered. That might be the tickets available. There might be tickets available on the 26th at the check-in stand. And if you have any questions, email us at info@tuolumnerailroad.org.
There we go. That's the important thing right there.
Yeah. So if you have questions, yeah. And then the last part is join us to have a fun day. Enjoy the train ride, especially when you hear the number 3 working its way back up to Railtown, because you can really hear it puffing away. And every once in a while they'll slip and slide a little bit, but hopefully that won't be the case. But that's the best part of hearing the train going back up the hill. Yeah. So if anybody has any questions or anything like that, let me know. Be more than happy to answer them.
Sure. I mean, we could even take questions now if they're typed into the thing here, and I'll let you know if anything does come up. But I want to say a couple things about this excursion.
Please.
One thing I'm really excited about it because the train doesn't usually run that late in the evening.
Correct.
So we don't get to see this excursion train in the evening usually at all. So that's pretty cool. And the second thing is, you alluded to it, John, when you were talking, that on the way back up, it's going to go past the depot at Jamestown. It's going to actually take that diverging route where the steam train never runs. Like I've been going to Railtown for years, and I have never seen it there on that.
It actually stays as it comes back up to Railtown. instead of going into Railtown, it actually stays on the main line of the Sierra Northern, about a half a mile, maybe a little bit more, all the way up, not all the way, but towards Sonora. And you'll get a better view of the backside of the roundhouse and some of the other equipment. And you'll see some nice, ugly homes, but that's a different story. But it gives you a more feeling of just how to see that terrain running that far back in the heyday would be something special. So,
and also, like you also alluded to, there's a bit of a grade there, so it's probably going to be working pretty hard. So that's pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to that, and I think everybody who's going to be there is really looking forward to it. If anybody else can join us, please do, because this is the first ever THRA steam excursion, and you can say, "Hey, I was there." I think that's pretty.
And
cool.
we will have some poster size of this to hand out or maybe sell. But if nothing else, we'll draw names out of the dinner table group, and somebody will be able to take home some of those as a victory or knowing, seeing that you actually did the terrain right.
Sure, it'll be a little memento of the
there you go.
Right? So, and this is cool too, because that's a Patrick Michael Carnahan original, isn't it? That picture? Yeah, that's
and
cool.
He's part of the Black Irish Band, so he's going to be there on train. He's also a board member of THRA, but his artwork is fabulous. So if you ever get a chance to see it,
we've actually had Patrick on this show sharing his artwork and photos and other stuff one time a few years ago. But I want people to know that the Black Irish Band, which he's been in for decades, also played at notable events such as the 150th anniversary of the Golden Spike. I saw them there because I was there in Utah, right up at Promontory. So, so they're really good, and they've been around for a long time. So anyway, let me bring that down. And John, thank you for joining us here. We'll see you.
Be happy to do it, and hope to see a bunch of you on the 26th. It'll be a great day, great evening.
Sounds
great. Take care, everyone.
Thanks, John.
All right.
Okay. Now, this is going to be awkward because we're going to bring on our featured guests, and I'm looking in the direction of there we go. One of them just came back. So why don't we bring them up, and we're going to do something a little bit different here. This is Mike and Mike. Hi, Mike and Mike.
Yeah, Mike squared.
And a lot of the viewers may not know, but this is my 5th time on Talking Trains. So, we're having a celebratory 5 times of Talking Trains with the Dr. Pepper toast.
Yeah, I feel so honored to be here with Mike when he's been inducted into the five timers club. This is really quite an honor. Cheers, everybody.
I have my drink here. Cheers, guys. Thanks for coming back, Mike. I mean, 5 times, are you sure? I don't remember being that desperate for content before. Are you sure it's the 5th time?
Yeah. And the Talking Trains came in the mail today, FedEx, just on time.
Okay.
Yeah, you did good, John, sending that. That was great.
Yeah, that's a stylish hat. See,
Mike said, he goes, "Where's the bib overall, the Talking Train logo?" And I said, "Well, this is a tight budget here."
Yeah, we're definitely working on a budget. Somebody is clicking away. Is that you, Murph?
Sounds like a new.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh, I thought it was I was trying to think of. Yeah, I was trying to think, and all I got was some rattling noises. So
anyway,
I want to mention. So these guys might look familiar because we had a program come out here on the channel, I don't know, a couple weeks ago or maybe a few weeks ago, that was all about hand signals on the railroad. And Mike on the right with the blue shirt was the brakeman conductor down on the ground, and Mike on the other side was the engineer up in the engine and in the locomotive. So it was I thought a really fun video to shoot. I learned a lot. The most important thing I learned was this. And
Yeah,
this, yeah.
somebody asked me, an airline pilot friend of mine today asked me about the beans today. He goes, I've never heard that before. And I go, well, it's just a railroad terminology and those things. And it really has had close to 2,000 views now on about, I believe it'll be 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks this weekend. But yeah, we had a lot of good response, and we had even some old railroaders, a lot of response from real railroaders saying, hey guys, great, thanks for bringing all these on. And they're very similar to our signals that we had in our railroad, even though we had little variations. And Mike knows that different railroads had variations. And at this time too, I want to introduce Mike, because a lot of people may not know Mike as the show. But Mike's how long did you work at Southern Pacific, Union Pacific?
40 years and 4 months.
Yeah. So, and I had 45. So Mike's also in. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, Mike.
Well, I started in early 1978 as a brakeman, and then quickly went into engine service, and was initially promoted in towards the end of 1979, and then just worked all over the LA division. In fact, where Mike and I are sitting right now is basically the boundary of the Los Angeles and San Joaquin division at Saugus. And so yeah, we both worked together on many different classes of service and jobs all over the basin. The LA division was quite an interesting division to work. It had just basically every type of main track operation that was in the rule book, right down the staff system. And so you had to know where you were, and in fact, the route from LA to Bakersfield itself, you worked under double track rules, yard limit, interlocking, CTC, double track,
Train orders.
Yeah, with single track with train orders, and you had it all in one trip. So it was interesting work, and they used to say from the desert to the sea, and up over the mountains. You worked every type of terrain and territory.
And Mike even worked on a really interesting line that I never did get to work on. I worked on part of it, but not all the way. And that's the line that went all the way from downtown Los Angeles out to Beverly Hills and Culver City. Mike's originally from Culver City, right?
Yes, that's right.
And for those of you that don't know, Culver City's around the LAX area, but there was a line that ran right down Santa Monica Boulevard.
Yes. It's all former Pacific Electric trackage, so it was little, kind of remnants of several different routes that were kept, for freight service as the PE's passenger service on the west side ended. And Culver City was a junction of 3 different routes, so it was kind of the west side hub.
Yeah,
and,
that's
and
pretty
the other
cool.
thing about that, now that line is now reinstituted with the purple line.
No, it's the Expo line. It's the old Santa Monica line, which the Pacific Electric called the air line, because mainly it was so straight, it was almost like the bird would fly, so they dubbed it the airline. And that was the last passenger service the Pacific Electric ran on the west side, and was the first rail service back.
And there's a lot of Mike is also a great author, and he's written some articles for the SP Historical Society magazine. What's it called? The magazine?
Train line.
The Train Line, and he did a article just on that branch line. It's what about? It's got to be 10 years old, though, right?
Yeah, at least.
Yeah, but if you look it up, it's very, very interesting, and the magazine in general is very interesting. So all of us have ate, sleep, and on railroads, and now we're making videos about railroads through John, and trying to express the knowledge of what it was like, the workings, the inner workings a little bit, and just the knowledge that goes along with that.
I've always had a deep interest in, history in general. I'm kind of a history buff, but railroad history and then history of the railroads in California, and then drilling down Southern Pacific history. I've been connected with the SP Historical Society almost since its inception in the early '80s, and served on their board for about 10 years, and written articles through the years, and then co-authored a book on the Sunset Limited with Dennis Ryan and John Signer, and it's just all stuff that interested me, and were basically myself answering questions that I always had, and had the opportunity to research out and then write about.
And then Mike and I have also taken a lot of old photographs that people have taken over the years and re-identified where they were taken, and make sure that the captions actually met, or what it said it was really was what it was. Because oftentimes, even in books, they'll show its train, it'll say it's eastbound somewhere, and you look at the markers, the little marker, the train symbols, and you'll find out, you go, well, that train couldn't have been an eastbound because it's the number on it.
Oh yeah, the train number indicators on the SP or the UP, yeah.
Yeah. So
but a lot of photographers, they would just jot down generally where they were. They didn't know exactly where they were railroad station wise. So a lot of times we were able, through the archiving, work with the society, and I would enlist Mike, because he grew up in the Santa Clarita Valley area, and just has an intimate knowledge. And there's a lot of photographs that have surfaced in the area, and they're misidentified, or they're not identified at all. And Metrolink has done some line relocations, so there were some photographs that are in areas where there's homes now. And a couple of times Mike took me out, and he would just hold the photograph up, and you'd see the mountain outline or whatever, and we're looking through homes, because the railroad moved over to the left or to the right. They did some line relocations.
and there are lines that we've worked now.
Yeah.
And so you look over and you go, hey, what is that over there? Or we've even worked jobs where we've actually stopped the train, not so much main line trains, but on local trains, and gone and digged around and looked at something and go, that's an old milepost or an old junction sign or whatever, and dig through the archive. So for you photographers out there, make sure you try to identify your photographs as best you can.
I think I want to mention something, because you guys brought up something that I think is really important, and really emphasizes the importance of what you're talking about, which is books. I think most of us have this idea that if it's written, it must be true. And authors sometimes get things wrong. And I can remember, even on my social media, on my Facebook page, there's a guy in Utah named Warren Johnson who posts pictures that he took from, pictures from his own collection that he took whenever, back in the 70s and 80s mostly. And he'll write a little blurb on what it is you're looking at. And there was one in particular where he wrote what it was, and somebody chimed in and said, that's not right. That's not where that was, because those locomotives were retired by then. And I read it in a book. And Warren, who took the picture, said something like, well, I guess I wasn't there then. And the point that I'm trying to make here is, just because it's written in a book does not necessarily mean it's true. So, because I get that a lot, especially with rail fans, they want to be right about stuff. And, if you're going to correct somebody, make sure you're right. I would expect that you guys could correct anybody having such intimate knowledge of the places where you worked.
Well, right.
So, right. So I think what you're saying about, correcting people's pictures and making sure that, yes, that is eastbound, or no, that's not eastbound. I think that's important, especially if they want to try to get it right. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, authors, this isn't done intentionally. Nobody's trying to be a know-it-all. Authors, a lot of times, they're not intimate with the knowledge of the entire area, like say a book on well, for instance, on the Sunset Limited, we covered from New Orleans to Los Angeles, and obviously I knew of the LA division portion of the photographs, but I had to rely on people, and I would try to get confirmation. And luckily, a lot of it occurred before it was published. And you go by sometimes even company photographs, and you'd think, hey, you think they'd have it right. And there were company photographs that were misidentified. It's not intentional. It just the author goes by the information he's given. It might be the back of a photograph or somebody wrote down, but sometimes they're just too generalized, like, oh, LA area. Well,
Right.
That doesn't help you. So you do your best, and then you welcome, constructive corrections.
Right.
And then hopefully in future editions or some type of an addendum or something that comes out later, you can make corrections. But anytime you're writing, about history, you want to get it as right as you can, and it never fails. As soon as you write something down and publish it or something, 15 people come out of the woodwork, and you've been doing your due diligence of trying to dig up all the information and network around and try to get as accurate as information as you can. And sure enough, somebody will surface, oh, I wish you would have talked to me, man. I could have helped you with this.
Yeah. And don't misunderstand. I'm not criticizing authors. I'm just saying that, I'm adding, or I guess emphasizing the value of what you're talking about when you're helping people identify things. That's really what I'm getting at. So I'm glad that you're around to do that,
Yeah, and then we're not getting any younger. Yeah, we recently, I was working at the depot out at Oxnard, and there was an article coming out, and Mike asked me to take a look at it.
Yep.
And it was kind of understood that SP had changed this depot from a standard depot to a more modern stucco depot on the coast. And anyways, I think the depot really was just stuccoed over. And I go, there's a little hole in the wall where they took something out, and you could still see the old siding, the old redwood siding from the old depot. And Mike came out, and I go, look at right here. We go, yep, sure enough, that is the old depot, is basically inside of a new shell.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say it had been written and documented in a book on the coastline, that Oxnard received a news station. And it wasn't until later that a local historian, long after the book was published, and said, Oxnard they didn't knock the old depot down, put a new one on. They remodeled the old one. And the same thing, if you look at, for those that might be interested in the coastline, you look at Watsonville Junction. Watsonville got the same treatment as Oxnard, and you can see similar architectural. It was late 40s. They were trying to present a more modern look, so the architecture is kind of modern. Yeah, they stuccoed it in, and in the case of Oxnard, they took the second story off the building and moved it about a half a mile railroad west. And it still is into a neighborhood right adjacent to the main line. It's a home, and it's still there. And it's the second story of the depot, and all the gabling and all that.
Yeah, the steep roof. And it's pretty funny.
Yeah.
And
that's going to the house.
Yep. Going to the house.
This is the house. This is the steeple. And when you turn around, here's all the people.
Oh, geez. This is why we have you on, Mike.
That's
sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah. Sorry. Ozzy.
Yeah. Just imagine what happened when Rule G was violated.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the kind of cab talk you have.
Yeah. This is cab chatter.
Cab chatter. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And what? Go ahead. Oh.
No, I was just, elaborating on what Mike was saying. You can never say that you're the last word on a subject. You always, to the best of my knowledge, the research that we've uncovered, you always leave that caveat that you never try to pound your chest and say, well, I'm the expert and I'm the last word on this.
Well, some people do.
Yeah, and it's a kind of an egotistical thing.
Especially trackside rail fans, they love to do that. They love
No,
to
I
talk.
love when a rail buff would come up to me and try to tell me more about my job than I knew about my job, and those people I just brushed off. But the people that were, you know, interested and wanted to know more and wanted to talk to me about my job or what it's like, you know, I loved it. I'd bring them up in the cab if I could, but yeah, there were some that would, try to out railroad you.
Yeah, that's really annoying. That is really annoying.
Especially if they've got their posse around them, right?
Right. And if they're the boss, right, of the posse. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Anyways, what we sort of wanted to talk about tonight too is, as Ray Arnett calls it, the inside baseball stuff of, what it's like in the cab. We hinted on some of those things in the video of the hand signals where it's so loud at the steam engines that you literally had to point at things. But later years in the diesels and stuff, there was all kinds of talk, and a lot of people think that you're looking at so many things at so many times, and you go over these routes hundreds of times. And I mean, how many times have we been to Colton? Thousands of times.
Yeah.
And mostly it was at night. But you look for things out of place, and you're constantly knowing that people may not realize this, but the engineers and the conductors and they have infinite knowledge of everything going along the track, and the crossing signs. I mean, guys would go, "Hey, the crossing sign's missing."
Yeah.
Or
you'd pick up on that stuff.
yeah, there was one guy who was sort of a know-it-all, and we go, "Hey, he noticed there was a tie moved 4 inches, but 10." Yeah, but that's the kind of cab, information that everybody's talking about, and that every signal, every nuance, people go, "Oh, that signal's dirty. That's why it looks that way," or it's tilted one way or another. There was so much stuff that
I think someone knows you guys, because someone's asking something very intimate here about nicknames for people.
Oh, they're
And
being incognito.
Yes,
too.
somehow, Mike, they know that you're Chia Pet, so I'm not sure who that who that is. Maybe you can tell from their name.
Too many people. I should have brought a photograph that I could have hold up, and my wife just uncovered it. It's probably the earliest photo of me at work. It was taken my first summer that I worked for the railroad, and I looked like Richard Simmons in his heyday. With you can't tell here, but my hair was pretty much out there, and so I earned a lot of nicknames, from Shirley Temple to Chia Pet to Richard Simmons, Tom Hanks, Tom Jones. If you've seen any of these guys, back in the day, they had their froze going. So yeah, I'm not surprised to see that Chia Pet. That's great. That's one of the later ones.
Chia. Yeah, they were actually thinking about producing when they figured nobody would know Mike. Mike's got a really funny story. His daughters never actually saw him. He would leave his overalls at work or in his car, and so they had to come to work one time to bring you your lunch or something.
Yeah, over at Jimco.
And Mike got off the engine wearing his overalls, his bib overalls, and they just started laughing.
Yeah, they were laughing.
And go ahead and you tell the story.
No, it was great, but and then I think it was I'll throw another nickname out there. Favorite rail of ours that had the last name of Ortega, so he earned the nickname of Chili, and he's the one that gave me the Chia Pet name. But when my daughters were there, it was the same incident. We went back into the yard office. He saw me and go, "Oh, it's Chia," and then my daughters latched onto that, and they were me that at home and everywhere else. So it was quite funny.
But when they saw him in his bibs, they act like they was wearing a Halloween costume.
Yeah, they thought I was dressed up like a farmer or something. It was pretty funny.
Well, I guess if you're carrying around a pitchfork, that might be the rest of that costume, right? And a
That's
straw
great.
hat.
But anyway, before we get too far into what Mike was talking about, as far as the intimate knowledge about the territory that you work, a lot of people, they think railroading when they're out photographing, nice sunny day and trying to get the shadows right and everything. But what people don't think about a lot, is some crew that's out there in the middle of the night and absolute dense fog, where you can't even see past the nose of the engine practically. And you're still expected to make time. You're in signal territory, and you're out there doing 60 miles an hour. When it looks like, looking through your windshield, like somebody came along with a spray paint can and painted your windshield white. And it was really, really super critical to know your landmarks, not just the signals. Of course, if you're working on greens, that's great, but you still had to know where the speed restrictions started and ended. One of the most impressive trips I ever made as a brakeman, as one of my early trips going up the coast, and it was a night run. And as most people that are even vaguely familiar with the coastline, and it's the same with Santa Fe's old surf line. It's a virtual roller coaster for railroaders. And not only are the grade changes just super, they're not gradual. They're just instantaneous. You tip over and you're going down, you bottom out, start climbing back up, and you're going 60, then you're going 40, and then you got to go around a 30-mile-an-hour cove, like a refugio. And you had to know where you were, because you're going along at 60 miles an hour. If you miss that speed restriction at refugio, you're going to be in the ocean. And it was just so impressive this one trip, because you literally could not see past the nose of the engine. And this engineer would just be in run 8, and all of a sudden he'd shut down, go into dynamic braking, or suddenly make a set out of nowhere. And I'm going, what's he doing that for? And then all of a sudden the engine leans to the right, and you're squealing around some tight curve, and then around to the left again. And then
Around to the right.
Yeah, around to the left, around to the right. And then sit down, stand up. and then kick the air off and run 8 and back up the speed again, and you're just in awe. And then he's suddenly blowing the whistle for some reason, and you see a flash of red crossing, gray crossing signal lights go by, and it just was just so impressive. And I remember talking to the engineer about it. Just, how do you know where you're at? And he says you got to have your landmarks when you pass this or pass that. He says, like a grade crossing sign, and you can't miss any of it.
Oh, and people probably don't realize it was a 218-mile run from Los Angeles to San Luis Obispo, what we call the coastline, and where the cruise would take it. I believe the next was up to Watsonville or Oakland.
Well, Watsonville for freight, yeah.
Yeah, Watsonville for freight.
Yeah.
So that's a long, long way, 216 miles in a train. And so you were qualified on the division, but a lot of times you were working with people that you didn't know. It wasn't like you were working a regular crew. And that's a whole nother thing about the crew talk. So immediately, like, I would want to get to know this person as good as I could, just to sort of find out like how much they did know or how much they didn't know. And a lot of people came with reputations, but then you had to be on guard and really know and really read your paperwork, or maybe get your timetable out and actually move over just a bit so you're more in the frame.
Oh, well, thank you. You're so accommodating.
Yeah. And, that would be very important as far as what we're talking about, the crew chatter.
Move over
Right,
more,
right,
so
right.
move over more so we can't see Mike. It'll look better.
Yeah, you go to the right. And then you
Yeah,
go to
and
the
left. Yeah. I have a question about that, and I actually had a chance to ask this question from someone who worked in a different division, really on a different railroad and a different division, who worked out in the valley, right, the Central Valley. And
Right.
as you know, it gets like pea soup fog out there. And the question that I had was, when there's pea soup fog out there, does it affect the train operation? Because you can't see if there's a log on the track or a truck or whatever. Or is it just you run like you normally run because frankly you can't stop for those things anyway, and when you can see them. What's the difference there? Or did they change, like did the dispatcher change the operation, or was it just a
Nope.
60 limit is a 60 limit no matter what?
It depended on your signal. As long as you're working on a green, of course, Central Valley, it's pretty much straight. You still have to know where you're, there's still speed restrictions. Even in the valley, you'd have city ordinance restrictions going through some of the towns and all that. So you had to know where you were. And again, you had landmarks. It was in the San Joaquin Valley, they actually had footage markers in the sidings. They give you 1,000-foot warning to the fouling point. They go like 1,000 feet, 500 feet, and just in case you kind of lost track of where you were.
And then an FP.
Yeah,
a
and
little.
then the fouling point sign itself. Yeah.
And
Right.
those signs were like, what, maybe this big. I have one in the garage. They're not really huge, but they were reflective.
Yeah.
And that's another thing too. The mileposts along the right of way, you could always identify what milepost you're at if you really, really got lost. But then you gotta have your situational awareness with you, that to know you couldn't be looking at some things and forget about other things. One time I worked from Fresno to Bakersfield, and on the way back, we started our trip, and there was a fog that was just above the rails, so you couldn't see the
fog, yeah.
you couldn't see the rails, but you could see straight ahead. So it was like running in snow or something. But eventually, it rose up to the point where it was completely above the cab windows. And the funny thing is, I've caught myself doing this, and maybe you've done it, but you think by moving closer to the windshield of the locomotive, it's going to help you see better in this pea soup fog.
Lean
But
forward.
it really doesn't. You're really better just to sit back and just take note of everything that you might go by. But a signal might fly by and just go shoo, shoo.
Yeah, it just seems odd to me that not being able to see because of fog. It seems like they would have had a speed restriction or something so that you don't run through a light, for example. But I mean, I guess the signals are set up to give you a warning anyway. Like you're not going to have a green signal and the very next one's red, right? It's always going to be yellow first, right? Usually.
At least the yellow, if not a flashing yellow before the yellow.
But that's a good point though, because if you think that you might have missed one of those yellows, you better start.
You treat it like you passed the yellow.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of situations where, hey, you remember what that last signal was? Did you see that last signal?
Yeah, don't want that to happen. Jeez, that could be really dangerous.
That's one of the things, when we hear about, the crew reductions and engineer only operations and all this, and it's all, I get it. It's about, they're competing with the trucking industry, and they got to reduce their costs to be able to compete, but they're doing it, at least in my view, they're compromising safety, because there's just been too many times where, just having another person in the cab, because like what Mike was saying, your mind's concentrating on one thing, but there's also 15 other things. You got track bulletins with a Form B order that we've got to worry about, or some new speed restriction, or watching the signals. And it really, really, really is a team effort. And just being there by yourself, yeah, I've always been very skeptical of running trains that way.
And one thing I want to mention, I get this question a lot. People always go, "Oh, you work for the railroad. Like, did you go to Chicago?" and you go, "That's not something that you were qualified over a certain area." And as far as the train and engine crews, they never worked out of their divisions. So and they had the 16-hour laws, and then later 14, and then 12 hours. So you were qualified in your area. It wasn't like you just kept running for, hours on end or whatever. So,
or even team running, like truckers do, they team drive. You can't do that on the railroad. You have to have too much knowledge about where you're operating.
Yeah, you wouldn't just be running to Arizona and the next, "Hey, are we in New Mexico yet?" "I'm not sure, it's foggy." But so that the people that worked on the train, they would stay with the train, on the passenger train, but not the crews. And that really never happened. "Hey, Mike, what's the difference from being in the cab of a steam locomotive versus a diesel?"
He must really think you guys are old.
Yeah, boy, that's a offhanded compliment.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, I used to ask the old heads. I hired out in '78, and at that time, all the old heads that we called the war babies. The country had gone through a long period, long depression, the Great Depression, all through the '30s, and they hadn't been hiring anybody. And then in the late '30s, and of course accelerating into the early '40s, there was a huge amount of hiring, a big wave of hiring, and then once after Pearl Harbor, it continued. And a lot of these guys, if you do a little bit of math, in 1978, they were at the end of their career, and I had the opportunity to talk to both trainmen as well as enginemen about what it was like, not just to work on steam locomotives, just the working environment in general, and how what we take it for granted that we're put up in hotels when we lay over and that type of thing, and what they went through at the time. But the question that I asked a locomotive engineer, an old head, was, oh my God, because my thought, it's one thing about being on a steam locomotive that's barreling down, the main line at 60, 70 miles an hour. It's another thing to be working an afternoon yard job at Indio in August. And you're in a track with rows of hot metal cars on either side of you, and you've got a firebox in your cab. And I don't know how they withstood those working conditions, but they said, we just didn't know any better, and they would wrap ice in their handkerchiefs and put it around their neck, and they had all sorts of tricks that they would do to try to stay cool. But they said almost unanimously, the steam locomotives, they were hotter than hell in the summer and then draftier than hell in the winter.
Yeah.
So it was, I guess you just love the fall and the spring, but the extreme seasons were it was a tough working environment.
Yeah, the romance of it probably wasn't so romantical.
Yeah, they told me that the diesels were just fantastic. They loved. I said, do you miss operating steam engines? Hell no, God, those things, those cantankerous machines, and yeah, they would go on about it.
I would imagine that you could probably
incremental improvements, even the cabooses and for some of the conductors I taught. Yeah, if you expired this is under the 16-hour law. If they expired under the hours of service law back then, they were on their own to get to the other end of their run. You either had to flag down another train or hope that a relief crew showed up. They didn't provide you transportation. You deadheaded either on another train or on the caboose with the next crew that showed up.
Yeah, they would even do that in, I'll say modern days, the 70s and 80s. That may not sound like modern days to some young people, but they would actually literally put 2 or 3 extra crews on trains, and as one crew would expire, they would go, okay, like let's just say Mike's going to expire at 5, and then
you got 4 or 5 more hours.
I got 4 or 5 or even 2 hours. I'll take over for Mike, and then another guy take over for me, and there'd be 2 or 3 people in the caboose, or 6 people in the caboose, and oh, okay, your guys' turn now. All to save money on a ride. Yeah. Southern Pacific. All to save a few dollars instead of getting you a. And the stupid part about that is, if they would have got you a ride, they could have got you back to LA and got you rested. You had
available
available again, not just sitting out there in the, waiting for these other guys to do the same kind of work. And then you always feel like, oh, I got to kind of help these guys out now. And it was just some kind of stuff like that could get really ridiculous if you ask me.
Yeah, they talked about the away from home conditions too. A lot of people would either find it was very common around a terminal where homeowners they would run a boarding house business, and if they had a 4 or 5 bedroom house, and even in Yuma, Arizona, there's still some old houses right near the tracks that some old heads told me, oh yeah, these are boarding houses, and you just come in at all hours and you leave some money on the table and pick up a key. It was kind of an honor system, but you were on your own. You paid for your own housing. You could either stay at a hotel or you just pick a place, depending on how cheap or you know how much dignity you had to yourself where you stayed. There's some legendary hotels in Indio, you know, where you had to go down the hall to take a shower. It was a communal shower, and yeah, and you're on your own to eat. And the only thing you were required of the railroad, you had to let the crew dispatcher know where you were, so they knew where to come, and what they called shagging the crews. They would come and shag you and pound on your door and give you your call.
Shagging.
Yeah, we that refers to something else in other places.
Yeah.
So
But
sorry,
there's
go
a
ahead,
lot
Mike.
of elements that comes with all this stuff, and the you know the just guys, you know, talking amongst each others and, you know, learning from other people, and guys, especially with new people, a lot of guys were, you know, would often try to help because they knew that you were coming against them in trains, so they wanted you to know as much as they knew, so that, you know, when you were coming at them with a headlight, you knew about those 500-foot markers and the 1,000-foot markers, things you weren't learning in training or forgotten about. And, you know, I worked with guys that would even open a rule book out and, okay, we got a red signal. This is a CTC signal. Let's go over what we got to do here. And you know, oftentimes, you know, at the time you thought, oh, this guy knows everything, and you realize he only had a year more seniority than you had, or even maybe a couple months. I mean, I'm sure you ran into. They hired a lot of people in the 70s, the 77, 78, and 79. So, but everybody kind of, you know, talked amongst themselves and try to help each other out.
Yeah.
Did you learn more from? Did you learn more from the rule books or more from the people that you worked with?
All the people you work with, undoubtedly.
The rule book was the foundation, just like the simulator for an engineer. It gave you all the foundational kind of muscle memory type thing. So when something happened, you reacted the right way. They would just run you through the same thing, like going into emergency. What do you do? Because, you know, fractions of seconds matter as far as controlling the slack in the train when you went into emergency, whether you were going to break into 5 pieces or even in the worst case scenario, derail because of severe slack action. So there were different, you know, techniques that they wanted you to do, and you couldn't think about it. Or let's see, what did they teach me? They would do a lot of muscle memory type things and just keep machine gunning you through the same situation over and over and over again, and you just had it drilled into you.
Yeah, and as Mike mentioned, going in emergency, and you were going to look at that thing.
Yeah.
Hey, kid, what do you got right here? If you have to go rescue a train or help when their train broke down, how does that process work? I'm assuming, if I'll answer the question, that would be more like if somebody may have like broke a knuckle. Well, then you could get on your radio and go, okay, yeah, your knuckle's 40 deep, so we'll go ahead and pick your brakeman up and then drop a knuckle off at the broke location. So that would be a case where you could help somebody out and get them back there faster to maybe get out of your way, because you're getting paid by the mile. So the more faster your trips over by the mile, the more money you're going to technically make. And then that becomes a pure teamwork thing. You know, why try to hurt somebody else's? You know, oftentimes if your power went bad, that would be a move that the dispatcher would probably make, you know, to give them exchange units or exchange one of your units, so they had a decent unit. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, you want to help the crew out, because you know what, you may be in trouble one time and they be in a position to help you. It's all, you know, you want to help each other out. The quicker they get over the road, the quicker you get over the road. There was a situation just in more recent times for me after the merger with the UP where this crew broke in two, but it was on a section of double track, and double track CTC, not pure double track. and the dispatcher called us, and we were being held back at a siding, past the end of double track, waiting for them to come off a double track and get by us. Well, they broke into, and luckily, it was good for them. They're stopped on a whole bunch of crossings, and it's a super long train. And so the dispatcher asked if there was a way we could help, and we figured out where they were, and we figured out the end of double track wasn't fouled, so we could advance down, come down the other main, get to where the break into was, and we took care of it, because locomotives and cabooses always carried spare knuckles as well as knuckle pins. And of course, you hope you have the right type of knuckle. There's an E and an F, and then another one that's just a tight lock knuckle for passenger trains. You had to be careful because I forget how it goes. You may remember. One type of coupler could take either an E or an F, but the other type of coupler, if you put the wrong knuckle in, once that sucker's in, they'd have to bring a welder out to get that knuckle off, because it would just it was permanent, because they weren't interchangeable.
Yeah.
So you had to know the coupler, and it was cast into the top of the drawbar, or the top of the coupler itself. And then you usually had, typically, at least on the SP, either the lead truck frame would have a pocket to hold a knuckle, or the fuel tank had a knuckle on it. Usually it was close to waist height. So those things are heavy. And usually if the mechanical department did their work right, the E knuckle was always on the engineer's side, and the F knuckle would be on, guess what? The fireman's side. And so if you determined you needed an E or an F knuckle, you knew where to go to get it, but of course you double check.
I did not know that.
Uh-huh.
But a lot of these newer models with the great decaling, they'll actually have a little E or a little F,
Yeah.
if they've done their homework on the manufacturer. And there's a little detail that maybe some of you modelers may not know.
Ooh. So yeah, and of course you double check, but there's a situation where, and obviously this is long after the era of cabooses, and another, just compromise in operations. It was so much more efficient to have the crew spread out, where you had a brakeman on the head end and a conductor and a brakeman on the rear end. It helped with set outs, or if you had trouble. And but it was costly to employ all these crew members, and again, they're competing with you can get into a whole discussion about subsidized competition, but having, in that situation, we could just tell the conductor, just stay up there. We'll be able to pull up alongside the train. We'll get the knuckle changed out. Luckily, it was just a knuckle. It wasn't a drawbar. If it was a drawbar, now we got a whole different situation.
And I'll mention this really quick, because a lot of people don't know a knuckle weighs around 75 pounds. Isn't that the weight? So if you had to carry a knuckle back 40, 50, say 60 cars, 75 tons on an uneven surface, the ballast, that is not fun. It would, and to a lot of people probably couldn't even do it. And that was one of the requirements of some of the training class. You had to carry at I think a relatively short distance.
You had to walk around the car.
Oh, is that what it was?
In our class, yeah. You had to be able to carry a knuckle around the box.
50-foot car or a 40-foot car?
I don't remember. If the instructor was really mean, he'd make it an 80-foot car. But and of course the old heads was going, anybody that carried a knuckle a great distance, they're a fool, because there's all sorts of tricks to minimize how far you carry a knuckle. You throw a knuckle off on the head end and pull the head cut down, throw the knuckle on the end of the cut, and if it's that car, change it out. If it's not, shove back with the knuckle. But sometimes you get into situations where you did have to carry a knuckle at least a certain amount of distance, and there were tricks to doing that too, especially if you had two of you, because you just put a flag stick through there's like a hole in.
Grab a hold of this side of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had the knuckle here.
Yeah.
And then you could carry it.
So,
it was very relatively easy to carry.
Yeah, it's easy to carry then, because right at the top of the knuckle, there's a hole through it, and well, the hole was for the pin. Yeah, what am I saying? So yeah, you had a hole that you could put a flag stick or something, even a tree limb through, and make it a team effort to move the knuckle around.
Right, and believe me, knuckles aren't the easiest thing to put in by yourself.
Oh, right.
Yeah, because
right.
there's a little mechanism in there, and you kind of got to if it. First of all, if you ever encountered a bad knuckle, you might encounter the crack, and the other part's still in there. So now you have to remove the pin, lift it up at the same time. Some guys would recommend that you put like a piece of an old tie in there to hold the cut lever up, get all the junk out of there, because then you had to actually literally, I don't want to get too much into detail here, but literally lift it up and there's like a little hole in there. Otherwise, it's just not going to go in.
Yeah, the knuckle won't go all the way in.
And that it's not the easiest process.
And again, everybody thinks, a nice sunny day, think about doing this either, it's pouring down snow or rain. It's the middle of the night, and that's when, Murphy's Law, was born on the railroad. And things would always happen in the worst possible situations.
Right.
It's either freezing cold and blowing snow, and you're out there trying to change a knuckle by yourself. And
or you're super tired. That's another thing.
Yeah.
And the tools that they had in the engines there was basically a wrench,
Yeah.
like a
Wrench.
giant pipe wrench, and
Steel hammer.
a steel hammer and a little. They would actually make these little homemade hammers that were just a piece of pipe with a little thing.
Tubular,
so nobody would steal them. And then you'd be lucky there might be a chisel there.
Yeah.
But that was it. It wasn't like there was a whole tool set up there that you could, carry around or whatever. And, hopefully I don't know how many countless times that would happen. And you would have to go through 3 or 4 units to find everything you needed just to change a knuckle out.
Yeah.
And,
Talk about changing an air hose out. Those air hoses would be, on that brake pipe maybe for years, and they get frozen on there, the rust and everything else. And you would have to take a fusee and light it and heat that thing up so you could actually take your pipe wrench and get that air hose done.
Right.
Unscrew. There are all sorts of tricks to try to do this stuff.
And then hopefully it wasn't one of those air hoses that would just kind of churn, because then you definitely need another wrench, which you didn't.
Oh, right.
have.
Yeah, the brake pipe itself wasn't secured, so when you went to move the air hose, the pipe itself, would move. So you had to have another pipe wrench. A lot of crews carried some tools around. I did. I carried especially wire cutters. You had to have wire cutters.
Yeah.
And masking tape or duct tape, screwdrivers. You carried some basic tools around with you in case you just needed something beyond what the railroad provided.
Yeah, a lot of engineers carried around Windex because the windows were so dirty. Not kidding.
Yeah.
Not kidding.
There was a question that somebody asked about mods. Did you see that one? Talk about the mods. Do you remember what that is?
The mods were a company. SP had a company housing, and they had them in Yuma. They had them in West Colton. I think Fresno had them. They were like a small.
They were modular. That's what what it was short for. They were basically double wide trailers.
Okay.
They were prefab buildings all grouped up to be like a little motel. And they would put it on railroad property, usually right close to the main line. The one at West Colton was right next to the
hump yard,
to the leads down into the bowl from the hump. So you heard all the retarders squealing away as they were humping at night. And the walls were paper thin, and it was horrible. A lot of crews, they were just, no, I'm going to go pay my own way. I'm going to stay in a hotel.
Somebody who just logged on to the stream and hears you talking about hearing retarders squealing while they're humping away, they might have a completely wrong idea of what we're talking about here.
Boy, talk about politically incorrect interpretations of the dialogue, huh?
right?
Yeah.
and shagging.
Right.
They
Yeah.
had. Go
I
ahead.
thought of another question, and I would imagine that it probably varies from person to person. But if you took, an engineer and say a brakeman conductor, and you looked in their grip bag, what would you find? I mean, what are the common things that you would find? Like, if you know what I mean, like what would every conductor have, and what would every engineer have? That's kind of the
Well,
Remember
boy,
Calvo? Remember Bob Calvo?
yeah, I know the name.
You remember him? Yeah, because you worked in the yard a lot back. This guy had this big, engineers used to carry around catalog cases, if you know what those are.
Yeah, the Sears catalog cases. They were.
Yeah, they were black or brown.
A lot of pilots actually still use them.
Yeah, they still use them. Yeah.
Yeah, they're about maybe 18 inches long by 9 inches by 12 inches high, and they had two little buckles that buckled up, and that was before the soft grips. And
Yeah.
another, I spoke about
they were
this.
durable.
The
Well, wait a minute, I got to tell you about Calvo.
Okay. Well, go ahead and tell me.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Okay, this may, I don't know whether this crosses the line or not.
Cruise story.
Yeah.
well, you're both retired, so you can't get fired, right?
Oh, I can't get fired. I just don't want to get you in trouble, John. Anyway, he carried around this huge jumbo engineer's. He was a brakeman, and he carried around this grip. And somebody asked him one time, "What you got in that thing?" And he opened it because it was super light. He opened it up, and there were a pair of gloves and a dildo.
What? For what?
You never know.
You never know. And this guy was a real prankster, and he would just do crazy things.
It's all about it's all about being prepared for anything.
Yeah. Well, he definitely knew how to keep the engineer awake. Let's put it that way.
Well, if you were going to an out of the way terminal, you'd have to bring a change of clothes unless you didn't want to change your clothes. But like some shorts maybe, and a new pair of underwear, and then you also had to have room for all your stuff just to carry it to the hotel. So a lot of brakemen, they wanted to make sure their lantern would fit in there.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, you had your railroad required paperwork, because that was required as a testing thing, that you had to have, your rule book, your timetable, your special bulletins, which I never carried. But, and you had to carry you actually had a time slip, because you filled out your work to get paid. You had to fill your own thing out. You had to say, like, I went to work in LA, I went to Bakersfield. It was 172 miles. We stopped here. We did this.
Yeah, it was a delay report, I think.
A delay report.
But that's how you got paid too.
That's how you got paid. So you had to have you wanted to have your old one, so you keep track of what you did in the last couple of days. There was always a little book that guys carried around. I stopped carrying around later years because you really didn't need it, but it was a time book. And the unions would put those out. And it was just a little book, and you could write it in that I worked with Mike Jarel, and we went to Bakersfield, and just to keep track of your pay, and guys would constantly keep track of how much they made,
and they self audit their paycheck, because you get a paycheck and you get what we used to call the green sheet. It would just list all your trips and what you were paid and what arbitraries and what penalties or whatever, and you wanted. We were paid, bi-monthly, so our halves were 2 weeks. So at the end of every half, you get a paycheck and your green sheet, and then you compare it to what you figured you should have made, and hopefully the timekeeper did the right work and it matched. And if it didn't, then you'd take it up either with the timekeeper or the union to get your pay corrected. It was a complicated system, so you had to keep track.
Yeah, there was a lot to keep track of. That's for sure. And then another thing, don't forget, you might, bring a jacket or something like that. If you were going up the coast, the temperature from LA could change 40 degrees.
Yeah, I got a good story to tell about that.
But yeah, and I also mentioned the reason they use these Sears catalog cases, which I talk about in the video that John did a few years ago, one of my trip to Bakersfield. It's available on TSG Multimedia.
Ooh, plug.
Yeah,
Yeah, we've
but-
heard of that. We've heard about those guys.
right.
They get
And
they
anyways,
get all they get the best guests and the best co-hosts, but I'm not so sure about the guy that runs it.
but back in the old days, when you took a ride in a company vehicle, there wasn't a whole lot of room for. You had a full crew. Was a engineer, possibly a fireman, 2 brakemen, and a conductor. So in the back of one of those Chevrolet Suburbans, everybody's bags had to fit. So, and possibly you might even have 2 crews.
Yeah, they
back
try
there.
to jam
So
2 crews.
These little catalog cases stacked quite nicely back there. Yeah. And it wasn't like guys now. You see them carrying big old lunch boxes and these bags that that the airlines would refuse to take. And but yeah, you literally people carry all kinds of stuff now. But you would have been shamed if you carried that kind of stuff. But so you definitely made it fit.
It had to fit in the cab too. I mean, the cab could get crowded too with up to 3 crew members.
Well, that's true too. Yeah, if you think of that aspect of it.
Caboose, you had room.
Yeah, you can't have everybody tripping over everything in the cab.
How big are the cabs on these modern engines that you guys worked in, like the SD70 or whatever?
These newer ones are a little bit bigger than the older ones, but
Not by much, but they are. They're definitely roomier cabs.
well, don't forget you have the control stand, so that sticks out. So basically, where the engineer is, there is no extra room for a bag or anything.
And the newer cabs, they were designed around no more than 2 in a cab. And
Right.
if you had a third person, either a student or maybe for some reason you were on a hauler or something that had a brakeman, he'd typically ride in the second unit or something. But
Oh, okay.
you just,
So-
like with the desk controls, you had the engineer's desk and the conductor's desk. And sometimes you might have a chair behind him. But yeah, they were a bit roomier. But as far as the argument between what we call the AAR control stand, which is the old conventional control stand, and the desk, I think the desk was a better design for the conductor, because when they eliminated the cabooses, the conductor had a desk on the caboose, and suddenly he was riding up front with no desk, and so he's trying to spread his stuff out on another seat, or if there was a fireman, it was really tough because he had paperwork to do, and
spreading on a seat, the thing's going like this.
yeah, the engine's
half the
shaking
time.
around. And so it really, became an issue. But the AAR control stand for the engineer was much better. It was really ergonomically better design, and it went through years of modifications and changes and development. And then suddenly somebody sitting in an office said, "Oh, an engineer should have a desk." And they plop this desk in front of you, and with all the gauges, now it impairs your vision out the front. It's incredibly hard to switch with, because when they brought the desk in, it actually moved the engineer's seat in slightly away from the window, and you want to be right up against that window.
Sounds very unergonomic.
Oh, it was terrible, and we all hated it, and we complained about it, and it's the old thing. Why didn't you bring one of these out and ask some engineers what they thought about it? And then it took about 10, 15 years, and they went back to the AR control stand, even in the wide cabs.
So maybe for the people, that, before we get to the question that I highlighted there, maybe for the people watching, can you explain? I think I know the AAR control stand is that rectangular thing with the knobs and stuff right next to your left arm,
Yes,
as opposed to the control stand that's like a barrel, right?
Oh, the barrel control stands, that goes even further back. And those were fine too, because even then, back then, they were designed to where, if you're doing some switching, a lot of times you want to swing around and lean out the engine facing into the train, because you're taking signals, and it helps you with your depth perception. Some guys would switch with the mirrors. I didn't like that, because it really messed you up for depth perception, and it seemed like guys would crash into couplings and stuff rather than be more accurate. But that
So Ozzy,
some
I do have a rather
great.
important question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you're kind of dainty. What happens if a guy my size tries to sit in the engineer's seat? Is it accommodating?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just wondered.
I'll tell you, the AAR control stand was much more accommodating because you had nothing in front of you. Which
Okay.
it was also great for when you're in a siding because you could throw your feet up on the heater, which was down below the window. Yeah, you could recline and kick back a little bit, but it allowed you the AR control stand. A lot of people didn't think about it, but everything was in the sweep of your arm. From
Okay.
brake valves, the throttles, dynamic braking, a lot of the switches that you use the most frequently, it was right in the sweep of your arm. You know, if you're sitting facing forward, it was your left arm, and a lot of times your light went out. You didn't even need to think or even see it because you know, like muscle memory, right? You could be looking out the window and you're going for the brake valve. You just know where it is, and you work the brake valve, the throttle. And then if you're turned, you know, if you're turned around and leaning out switching, now you're leaning out and it's the right hand. And a lot of times you don't want to lose sight of that brakeman giving signal. You don't want to keep looking in. Okay, what do I need here? And then look back. And so again, you just be leaning out, and your hand knew where to go, and it was all within reach.
So it's kind of, it was sounding a little bit like it's cramped in there, and which I was like, wow.
Well, I'll tell you, the GEs were the worst.
Really?
Yeah, you could. In fact, remember how narrow those doors were on those?
Oh yeah, they were definitely narrow.
Oh my God! And even the later engines, the GEs are. I mean, probably going to hear about this. They were, and I know they've improved. They were just the worst ergonomically designed engines. They were not designed around an engineer. And you talk to the mechanical people, and they hated working on them because they were just designed dumb to work on, and just irritating things like if you had to turn a cab light on, you had to get up out of your seat to reach up and turn it on. Where EMDs, you could reach it, or they had a switch on the control stand too.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, just stupid things like that.
Yeah, another thing that Mike and I, when I hired out, and actually for quite a while, there was, you know, those GP9Es still running around, the SD9s, SD7s in the yard at Taylor Yard.
Those are great.
So
engines.
Those were, you know, those are that had the high cab or the high nose. The good thing about those is that they had the bathrooms you didn't have to duck in to get into them.
Yeah, you can stand up.
You could stand up, but they still had the ropes.
Yes.
For the horn on those things.
Yeah.
You know, they were definitely right out of the 1950s or whenever they were built.
Yep.
And they had that funky control stand. What do you call that? The barrel. Well, they did have the barrel thing, didn't they?
The throttle was a kind of a barrel like a can, and and then you had the old 24 brake valves on them, which I thought were fun. Some guys didn't.
I never did understand those brake valves on those things.
So while I still have you, and before we go back to the comments from the audience, I was just really wondering. You were mentioning about the roller coaster ride going down the coast. How much of that does the engineer do kind of by the seat of his pants, feeling the road, and how much of it is I've got to watch my instruments and check, you know, lines and all that kind of stuff?
Well, you could run no two trains are ever alike, even the same type of train. They're never exactly alike. So you kind of get to know the train is, you know, you get through experience, you know, kind of what to expect, what to anticipate. You know, you're looking at your footage and your tonnage and your tons per operative brake and all that, tons per operative dynamic axle, all these things. And in your head, as you gain experience, you kind of know what to expect. But as you get out there, you get to know that train, and then you know the territory, so you kind of know. You know, when you drive a car, it's one solitary piece of equipment, right? So all your changes, your braking, it's right at that time. But when you got a mild train behind you, it's doing something different back there. anywhere, especially on the coast. It could be going uphill while you're going downhill, or while you're climbing, it's still falling into a sag. So you have to be thinking about where you're at and where the rear end of your train is, and the terrain that you're on and what's coming. And you have to anticipate it. It takes a little while for a brake set to work its way through the train. The common measurement is 500 feet per second. So if you have an 8,000 foot train, do a little, quick math, at 500 feet per second, you're making the set from the head end, and that's working its way back through the train. So the head end of the train is setting up before the rear end is. So you have to anticipate that with your power, how you're changing your power, whether you're in dynamics and the slack sponge, and what you're doing with the train, whether you're cresting over, or pulling up away, diving down into a sag, or pulling up away. You have to think about all these things, and you have to make your moves a little bit ahead of time. You have to know what you're going to do ahead of time, because if you do it at the moment you need it, it's too late. So how do you work when you go up the coast? You earn your frickin' money. I when I got that Guadalupe turn for a while, I remember this great conductor named Spitter. About halfway through the run, it's dark, because we went to work late in the afternoon, so we're going up the coast through some of the worst, and I'm just working the throttle in the air, and he finally looks over and he says, "You're getting kind of a workout over there, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, that's been a while too," but I enjoyed it.
So I'm sorry, but an opinion from you guys. So how do you see an automated train handling all of that kind of complex information?
They already have like cruise control type. What is it called?
Yeah, I forget what they call that.
There's two different systems where you kind of you enter all the tonnage and footage and all the stats on the train, and it's something that has to do with fuel conservation. And you kind of set it, you monitor it, you watch it, and you can take it over, but you let it do its thing. But oh my God. I've never operated it myself, but some of the engineers tell me they've never experienced so much bad slack and the speed falling down because it made the adjustments too late, and break-in-twos and all that kind of stuff.
And that's another point. It kind of goes with this question down below. When they did cut the cabooses off, when they got the crews all on the head end of the train, now the engineers didn't have to worry about the caboose. You couldn't just slam somebody in a caboose on a 100-car train, because you were going to hear about it and possibly injure some people.
Well, you might spill their beer.
Yeah, because it was rather severe, and so you had that was a dynamic that. Would you say it made less work for you when you didn't know cabooses then?
Not for me. There were engineers that didn't care. But they also didn't want to break the train in two. If you're giving the crew on the rear end a good ride, you're also giving the train a good ride. And the in-train forces that cause the train to break in two. If you get lazy and there's nobody back there and I don't care. Those are the guys that are getting the knuckles and the drawbars, and so you still had to use some skill.
Yeah, I would make a point. I'll make a point here too. I would say in my entire 45 years, now I worked a lot of local jobs, so you can't really worry about knuckles and things. But on the mainline trains, on the Southern Pacific and the Union Pacific later, I may have gotten, I'll say, 10 knuckles on mainline trains at the most. I know that that's how good most of the engineers were and trained. They were pretty good. And, so that wasn't a common thing to have happen, at least on the LA division.
It was hard to live down too.
Yeah. A lot of times that was a funny story, Murph. You'll appreciate this. And the worst thing would be to get a drawbar, to suck an entire drawbar out of a car, because that was something that brakemen could not fix. Yeah. And if you were to get a drawbar, the brakeman would often move it so everybody could see it, and then your name would be in chalk on that drawbar.
Have you guys ever heard of grease chalk? It's what Carmen used to mark it. It's kind of a waterproof chalk, right? So guys used to carry it around with them, and if there was a knuckle laying on the right of way or a drawbar, especially somebody with thin skin, even if it wasn't their knuckle. I remember this one engineer, he had his name on every knuckle that was out there on the right of way. And it just tear the guy up.
And I will say, of all the knuckles that I've ever replaced, they've always had sort of some kind of fracture already in them, because you could tell, because it would be shiny metal, but then you'd see like a crack in it. So it wasn't just like it was getting ready to give way.
Yeah, it was an old break, we used to call it.
Yeah. And I work with a lot of engineers on the LA Vision, and I'm sure other railroads could corroborate these stories. But we would be like pulling out of the yard, and this engineer would say, "I think you guys there might be a handbrake on one car that's like 40 cars back." He knew the territory so well that he knew what that train should start rolling out on its own. And Mike would, say,
absolutely,
yeah, they go, "It's down here. Why is this train, hanging up a little bit? There's got to be something wrong back there." And oh, great, now you'd either, jump off the engine, let it roll by, and then sure enough, did you find anything? No, we didn't find anything. But and that was another thing, having the two extra people on the train. Now you're down to one person. If you got a guy who really doesn't know his job that well, you didn't have two or three other people that would go, "Hey, I think I know what's wrong," or
it could be a retaining valve. We used to catch retaining valves that were turned up.
People talk about. Go ahead.
Yeah, that whole topic kind of that you're describing right now kind of reminds me of a video I saw. I think we talked about this at some point, Mike, that it was some video someone had posted. Yeah, I knew, I was just waiting for someone to say that. The one that I talk to all the time with the blue shirt. And it was a video that someone posted, I think, to Instagram or one of those TikTok or whatever, of a train that was pulling out of, it was like somewhere in the Midwest, and there's this big, grain place, and they're just pulling cars that are off the track.
Oh yeah,
and it's tearing down the building. And I remember asking you, like, wouldn't the engineer feel that? Like, I mean, they must know there's something wrong, right? As they're destroying this building because they're pulling the cars that are on the ground through the building or through next to the track.
I saw that video. I know the exact video you're talking about.
Right. So wouldn't the engineer feel that?
Was that a remote control job?
I don't know.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, because some of the worst incidents like that where, you had a guy with a belt pack and the engine's, half a mile down, and he's switching. He doesn't know what's going on in the middle of the train. It's like, no, it's not moving. Let's give it more power.
Yeah, and this goes
tearing up the railroad.
And this goes to your model railroads out there. If you think you're taking too much throttle or whatever on your little control thing and it's not moving, you better find out. There might be a derailed car or something like that in your little model trains too. And so your awareness and going back to the crew talk and everything else, and that's another thing too, is like when you're running a train on a walk around type layout or any layout that has signals or any kind of thing, you should be walking with the engine and looking ahead of you and watching everything, just like me and Mike would do on a train. We're not just talking to somebody, but we're watching ahead and knowing where we're at. So that's where this all ties into the model railroading aspect of it.
And I belong to a club, and you might be running, might be your power on the head end of the train, but it might be a bunch of cars that belong to other people. And the last thing you want to do is tear somebody else's, expensive models up. And you could be stalled somewhere, like you're saying, out of view, giving it more power, and you're just burning up the locomotives.
Yeah, so as your model railroader, your situational awareness, make yourself aware of the layout, and at least if you don't know, just walk with the train and don't be talking to your other operators while things are going on. Keep an eye out. You don't want to run somebody's equipment into
somebody else's,
into somebody else's.
Well, it's hard. It's hard not to talk though when you're at an op session because you have to give each other crap the whole time. That's
Yeah.
how we operate at our op sessions.
Yeah, it's kind of a balance thing, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think
But
people,
there does have to be some discipline even on a
Yeah,
big model railroad layout.
I think model railroad operators also have to realize that real railroaders, I mean, on a model, you have 3 feet or 4 feet to the next place. Whereas on a real railroad, you got miles sometimes to get to where you're going. So it's not the same. You've compressed so much space into a small area that it's like, it's not the same thing, right? So
Yeah, but you also, at the same token, you should be looking ahead at your switches to make sure they're properly lined for you. I mean, this is just stuff that just over the years, like when we're on an engine or a train, you go, hey, that switch is wrong. You're looking ahead. You might be talking about, your weekend, but then you're looking through the yard, you're going, hey, that switch is wrong. Like I was working with Mike one night, and some maintenance away guys left a derail, a portable derail on the track. They were working, so they had to require to put a derail on, and they just forgot about it.
That was Jimco, right?
Yeah, Jimco.
Yeah.
And Mike saw he goes, there's a derail on the track, and of course stopped, and we had to call them up and have them, they spike it to the tie, so we couldn't take it off.
Yeah, and I think they had it locked with a maintenance away lock.
Yeah. Well,
Oh,
they
wow.
did. Yeah. So, there's a situation where, Mike saved the day, but you should never, run through a switch. On the prototype, you run through a switch, you're in some big trouble. And
Yeah.
not to mention if you ran into the side of somebody's cut.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
or if you run, I don't know if you guys saw the one, some railroad back east, I think it was Strasburg, where they ran into the front of a backhoe and put a hole in the smoke box front.
Yeah.
Did you guys see that? Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a question being asked by Dave about the technologies and how that's changing the job.
Well, the PTC, in some ways, a lot of guys don't like it, but as far as working on the PTC, you didn't really have as much as I did. But the thing about, at least you kind of like going back to the fog, the PTC, you kind of have an idea where you have an exact idea where you're at. So that would help out, tremendously in a fog situation. And then it's pre-printing out there, like what your next speed zone is, if you got a work order, if you're going uphill around a curve, it even has that information on it. So a lot of useful information as far as that goes, as far as the PTC goes.
Yeah, it's kind of like Google Maps where you're driving along and you kind of see a map of the railroad.
And another great thing about the PTC that when we used to come back on the Colton job to LA, when you get around the downtown area of LA, you could see the signals like 6 miles ahead. Now, you never had that luxury in the old days. So you would go, oh, we got to line up all the way to Mission now, Mission Tower. But that's sort of a nice little feature, I can tell you that much, especially for an engineer. Now you know how to react. And you go, hey, we'll just go, because before you'd be going, oh, maybe we're going slow. We're going to stop here anyways, and things like that, because you're constantly thinking ahead on everything. Then you got to think back on the train with the crossings. Are we going to block a crossing? We got to hang back. Well, we have a signal now. We know that.
Yeah.
Type thing. So there's a lot of information. The PSR, it never really affected me in my final years that much, other than maybe some delays and things. But it's kind of funny. Somebody was telling me recently that they go, hey, we got a great idea how we're going to do this. And I go, that's the same way we were doing it 25 years ago. And they kind of went back to it. And the LA division is still being run the way it was on the SP.
Isn't that funny?
And everybody thinks they got a brighter idea, but it's still the same. And they try to change things and make new uses of yards, but I recently had some young guys operating on my layout, some young kids, a 15-year-old, 18-year-old, last Saturday, as a matter of fact, or 2 Saturdays ago, and I really wanted to watch what they were doing, because I wasn't sure of. I know the one guy had never operated a model train, but he hung around. He's a rail fan, And after I got to looking at the situation and my experience, I go, you know, I got to keep a track in my brewery yard clear. I think that'll be a much better way of doing things than shoving them on the main line or the siding. And so I'm actually changing my own way of doing things, and it goes along with my experience on the prototype of how I would do it. And so I've now cleared off one of my yard tracks in the area of my brewery to store all the outbound cars temporarily. So that was something that I discovered just, you know, one quick operating session, because I was thinking like, how would I do this now? You know, I just had them shove the main to make things easier for them. But
Well, that brings up a question that I have now. Having done that job during SoCal Ops 3 years ago or whatever it was, is that something that's a difference in your home layout? In other words, was the original prototype laid out that way and you just didn't design it that way on your layout? Or was your layout?
Well, they have a storage yard exactly like I have it. Now granted, it will hold 24, you know, it'll hold 24, and one track holds 32 cars. So you have a lot more room. You know, my longest tractor holds 12 cars, and then the other 3 tracks hold 9 cars each. So that's a lot of cars for a model railroad.
Right, but do you understand what I'm asking you though? Like, did you use a storage track to build your outgoing train at the real brewery, or was the siding long enough that you could just build it on the siding and it didn't matter?
Well, you could do it on the siding, but then also on the model railroad, I run into the issue of now everybody's leaning over the train that they just set out. So I go, that's not the best situation. So that's why I had to, you know, change my operations a little bit. And because it, you know, it's a lot different than the prototype when you're there and walking up. And they had some room inside the brewery. The real brewery had room to store the outbound cars, which I don't have that luxury.
Right. So your home layout is a little different track wise compared to the prototype.
Well, you know,
slightly.
Obviously, we simply don't have the room.
Yeah.
You know, and another thing about it is, you know, on the prototype, you know, you can handle a lot more cars, and it's, you know, you don't want somebody grabbing 16 cars and taking 12 cars. So another 30-car handle. A handle means how many cars are in your train, basically, at a local, and you know, and spotting and pulling cars. It's not the ideal situation on the prototype, and it's definitely not the ideal situation on the model. So that was something I discovered, you know, and I, you know, just that leaning over aspect of it. But it worked if you were super careful. But I go, yeah, I need to change this. So that's how I did it.
There's a comment there that, there's a comment there that I think that Mike Jarel might have a opinion about.
Well, I wanted to get in a little bit of the PTC thing from, you know, the operator's standpoint. You know, every technological advance that we've had to deal with on the railroad, there's always some good things about it. And then there's, you know, my dad told me one time years ago, says every technological advancement has its advantages and its disadvantages. And you try to exploit the good things and mitigate, you know, the bad ones. And the one thing that I had to be PTC qualified before at a certain point, although the locals that I was working were not using PTC. So I never used it other than getting qualified in a simulator situation. And the one thing that I took from it that I thought was sort of a disadvantage was it took a lot of the judgment and the skill away from the engineer. You had to do things in your operation, especially if you're approaching a restriction, that made a very skittish, you know, PTC system happy. And at least if I had to use it on the jobs that I was working, it would really slow us down. It would impact how quickly we could clear up for a train and make a meet. And we'd have to rethink You know, whether we wanted to try, you know, if you tell a dispatcher, hey, we're going to do 20 minutes of work here on the main line, then we'll clear up for 761 at Camarillo. And the dispatcher's trusting you because, you know, you screw them once and they're never going to trust you again because they get into trouble if passenger train's delayed. So there's a lot of things that you're keeping in your head. Okay, we can do this. I know I can make Camarillo, and you're almost constantly working on flashing yellows or yellows, and they require speed reductions. But the PTC, like when you go by that flashing yellow signal, it wants you down to 40 now. And the rule requirement is you have to be down to 40 by the next signal. And then the next signal being yellow requires a further reduction, but down to 30. And as long as you see that you have a signal like into a siding, if you can see it, you can kind of do what we call grandstanding on it. You can keep your speed up and then just do a quick reduction. If you've got a small local, something, you can be you can be kind of like a slot car. You know, you can run a lot different than if you're dragging an 8,000 foot, 6,000 ton train or something around. But PTC doesn't see the difference. It thinks that you're running a big, heavy train no matter what. And so, you know, you're down to 30, like, you know, and with the newer CTC and signal spacing that the UP uses, and that's to reduce cost of signaling, the signal spacing is just miles. And so it just, I see areas where, you know, it just takes, in that situation, it takes away from the judgment and the skill and the experience of the engineer, and now you're just pleasing the computer. And that was just one of the negative aspects that I saw. And you could put that into you know, mainline train operations too, where things were much more nimble and experienced crews knew how to make meets and make them safely. Now that whole thing is being taken away from you, and it just wants you to comply within a very, very rigid guardrails. And I know it's all about safety and what's behind it. And but anyway, there's your double-edged sword of technological advances.
Yeah, the one thing about on a local, which is different from the mainline train that a lot of the viewers may not know, is that you have to constantly update the computer. So if you're picking up a car, if you're picking up 5 cars and setting out 1 car, now you have to redo the whole consist, which isn't exactly the easiest process. And that's something on a mainline train that you just simply are not going to have to do. Maybe one time doing a set out, but you have other things that you could be, when you're like make a set out, you're pumping on the air or whatever. So but now you're setting a car out in, you know, Allen Industries and then picking up 3 cars there. Well, every time you do that, you have to update the system, which takes time. And like Mike says, if you don't have time to get in the clear, now you're really beating you're playing beat the clock, and you put the wrong information in, and then it doesn't coincide with the conductor's zebra machine. Yeah. Now it says, you know, it's complaining about that. If the conductor did his work in the zebra, it will update the computer now.
What's a zebra?
But he doesn't have time either. How could you update the computer while you're walking up or you're spotting cars? It just simply can't happen that quick.
But
that's an acronym for you want to know what the zebra is.
Oh, it's just like a little handheld device. A lot of like stores like CVS use them. They have them at Home Depot to find products, to find price tags. It's a company that makes these little devices. But UP was it's the size of a cell phone basically. UP uses them like when you're spotting a car, you are actually putting it in there at the same time it is done, so they can start charging their customers. Where in the old days, you would go back and you say, oh, we spotted the cars at 4 p.m. here, at 4:30 here, picked them up at 4:35. It was all done with paperwork.
Yeah, at the end of the trip.
But then that paperwork could be 12 hours old.
Yeah.
By the time that you tie it up. Now this is just real time thing.
So it's probably like that thing.
Think of your UPS delivery person.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. It's probably that thing that the UPS guy or the mailman scans your stuff when it's delivered, right?
That look about the same?
Very similar, yeah. And,
Yeah.
and the other thing about it too is if there was some kind of thing in an industry like like say a truck was blocked, say you're there in the middle of the night. A lot of people don't realize that we're often in industries, at night when nobody's there. So they left a pile of lumber on the track. That happens a lot. And so they have the capability to take a photograph of that situation so the customer can't lie to the railroad and go, there was no lumber there.
Yeah.
So, or whatever the situation was, a truck park, one of their employees left a truck there.
A flag was left up.
Or sometimes companies would even lock like a private lock on the gate. So now you're not even able to access it. We don't carry around bolt cutters.
Yeah. I have another question that I want to ask for my own curiosity that maybe we can do my question and we'll get to the comment that's on the screen here. But the other question that I have is, what information does the end of train device contain? I would think that somehow you would update it in that or something to let the PTC computer know what the train looks like now. Because doesn't it send information to the computer like the brake line pressure and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, but that's all it has, basically.
But
Oh,
it's
that's it?
Right?
Yeah,
It's continuity.
the
A lot of
continuity,
people's
and it will tell you if the train's moving or not moving. But basically the brake pressure. So it really doesn't. It doesn't like maybe what you're saying is, does it send a signal back and go, hey, this train now is 1,005 feet long, not 1,400 feet anymore. It does not have any kind. That would be something they can maybe put in it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But,
What about-
it replaced the conductor's valve that used to be on the caboose, showing the brake pipe pressure at the rear end, and you need to know that.
What about those defect detectors? Can't that send information back to the PTC computer? How many axles you have or whatever?
The dispatcher gets
that is technology that it will tell you if there's an extra car on the train now. It could update it. That's correct. So that information could, I guess, be updated to the.
I don't know about the PTC, but the dispatcher definitely. If there's a trip detector, the dispatcher also gets the message.
And they would say, you have an extra car in your train.
Right, because it counts axles. The detectors, they count axles in your train, and your list has an axle count, and you want those to always match.
And some detectors do have a thing which reads the numbers on the cars, with the little
like the old ACI.
the labels. I forget what they call them right now, but the gray labels on the side of the car, they will read them and have their order, and if you had anything extra, it would definitely pick that up. But
Are those optical labels or are they RF labels?
No,
They send out a little radio.
they're a little. The radio reads the car number from that.
Yeah. So it has some kind of a transponder or something that clicks off, like your fast track when you go across a bridge or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It reads every locomotive, every car. It kind of mimics what they had in the 60s with the barcode thing that was on.
Yeah, the ACI labels.
Right. Now it's a 4-letter acronym now that they use. Automatic car
I
something.
can't think of it. But,
yeah, I can't either. But it's a much improved system.
But a lot of models come with them now. You'll see it on the actual model. And I know that I've read articles that these railroads are now technology has gotten to the point where they want to know like the wheel temperatures of each wheel to prevent some kind of catastrophic accident from happening. But that technology is not quite there, and then they have to also have people that can somehow update that information to their system and things like that. I've heard this stuff's all coming in, because if they have one catastrophic accident, that could pay for itself in a lot of different ways. Scanners.
Yeah, my understanding is that they replaced the ACI labels because they'd get dirty and they wouldn't read properly and stuff like that. So
it wasn't dependable.
Right, for sure.
Probably better than what they had before that, because it was more automated. But like you were saying earlier, Mike, that with advances in technology, there's pluses and pros and cons.
Yeah, well, these little gray why can't I think of the name of those things? But anyways, it's all internal, and they're pre-programmed before they actually put them on the car, which tells the car number.
Yeah. I'm sure they're unique identifiers, right? So
yeah. Most models now, any modern model would have that feature on their model.
I'll have to
those
look.
things, as far as the power consists in a train, it'll actually update the your list, and it'll tell you which way each unit is facing, because that's kind of crucial down the road, for the mechanical department to know, which the trailing units, which way they're facing in a consist, in case they need it as a lead unit. Or but yeah, it would actually, it has that much information that it can tell you which way the unit's facing in the consist.
So there's another comment showing up on the screen, and it looks like some kind of an acronym, and it has more to do with
that's one
NS.
that we were trying to think of. Leader. Yeah, we that's that kind of cruise control thing. That we had. Leader was one that we've.
Was that what it's called?
Yeah, that's one. There's two of them that we've used, and I don't have any experience with it. I got off the main line before
I don't either.
any of that stuff was being used, but it's pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
And those things, it was all those are all about fuel conservation. It took the decision making out of the engineer's hands, whether to use what's called throttle modulation through changes in the grade, or whether to use the air, go into dynamics, and it was all calculated around fuel conservation. And I'm sure they ate up far more in train break-in twos with you can't run a train like a truck or an automobile. You got to have slack control, and sometimes that it involves power braking, and there's all sorts of factors that come into play. We were taught when I started, when I was brought up as an engineer, you always wanted to keep the slack as consistent as possible. All the problems you would ever have were when the slack changed in the train. And if you do need to change the slack, you don't want it to be a violent change, because that's where you get your drawbars and knuckles, or damaged lading, or a guy in a caboose goes through the bulkhead.
And as Mike was mentioning to you, Murph, earlier about, these trains are never the same with the weight, the length, the different size cars, the tri-levels versus the shorter cars,
just the whole makeup,
all these factors. So that's something in the, the greatest computer system they got to factor, and the train will handle completely different. It'll go downhill one day, but now you got a shorter train, it's going to behave differently, and all that stuff's got to really be thought out. And people smarter than me are figuring that kind of stuff out. And and I don't think there's engineers in there that are working on these computer screens, or railroad engineers.
It's kind of unfortunate, but the thought process, and it's already been, top executive of the Union Pacific, in union talks and everything, and just really came out and just said it, in close talk. Their ultimate goal down the road, their focus down the road, is to not have a human being on a train. And UP even has an acronym for it they've already developed, which is
Screw you, I think.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
no, it's ATC.
Vacant seat, is that what you said?
No, it's ATC. Not automated. What is it?
Automated train control or automatic?
What do they call it when the trucks that are
autonomic, something like that? Autonomous
train control. So they've assigned an acronym, and that's where all their technological thinking and research and development and everything is, to get human beings off the train, and they're getting closer and closer. They got engineer only mainline trains, and they've just reduced locals down to conductor only in a lot of cases.
So the thing is, one of the things that really caught me about what you guys are talking about today was this idea of the coast route. And to me, it reminds me of my drive home. I live in the middle of the mountains.
Oh yeah.
And all these execs in the Silicon Valley are all going off on how they're going to have, self-driving cars and this, that. And I'll invite every Silicon Valley exec to hop in their autonomous car and come up Highway 9 and let it drive them here. We'll have a lot fewer execs.
Yeah, I'm thinking about winter driving conditions too.
Very true. Yes.
Yeah.
Black ice. Oh, that's
Yeah.
special.
Well, even on the trains, you
Yeah.
could run into some wet conditions, and I know in the Sierras they add a unit for snow, things like that. And
Effort, yeah.
I've been in industries where they're weed covered, and literally you would tell the engineer to stop, and he'd be skidding along just some weeds that got pushed over on the tracks, and would just
Yeah, you'll slide on it.
or industries that did a lot of corn oil and things like that or soybean oil that would get on the track, and it would just create like a ice. So if you want to have an autonomous thing, I mean, there's a lot to factor in.
So I used to be a programmer, and let me tell you, it's really easy to design for 95% of the problem.
Yeah.
That last 5%, that's going to kill you. I mean, in trains, it could be literally kill you. Getting that last 5% is the hardest thing to deal with. And it sounds like you guys dealt with a lot of that 5% area. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'll get off soapbox.
Oh no, I'm right with you on that soapbox.
Well,
EMS stands for energy man. There you go, energy management system. Yeah, EMS is another. Yeah.
I have seen that. I have seen that name. That's for sure. Well, it's getting around the 2-hour mark, and
yeah, I was gonna say that I didn't expect that. I thought you guys were gonna bore me, so it would seem like it took a long time to get through the 2 hours. But I'm actually still very interested. Wait a minute, I'm getting a vision of maybe doing this again sometime in the future, because I feel like I still have a lot of questions. Because it's fun to pick your guys' brain about this stuff, because I love model railroad operations, and I'm always thinking of, well, how would they do this in real life? Because I want to do it as realistically as possible. I mean, I know it's a model and all that, so you can't do everything, but how long would they wait for the brake test or the air test or whatever, that kind of stuff. I'm trying to add this into my operation so that when I'm doing stuff, it's like, well, someone's going to have to wait because I have to do my air test. And sorry,
I'll tell you really quick. One of the formulas we use with totally what we call dry cars without any air in them. When you couple up the engine and start pumping on the train, you figured a minute per 12 cars to fully charge a train and then start your air brake test.
Yeah, see, but now that's going to require too much math on my part, because if we have an 8-to-1 fast clock, I got to figure out what 12 divided by 8. Oh, forget it. I'll just wait. You're going to have to just wait till I'm done with my pretend brake test or air test.
They'll have a cup of coffee or something, just just simulate, a little bit of time
but
I'll just tell them to go eat a donut.
Right.
There,
and John,
that's what we did.
Yeah.
Yep.
But John's great programming here, it all leads in is the more the more detail you know about the actual operation of the prototype, it can make all your model railroading seem more realistic. I mean, everybody goes to this giant extreme now with every bolt, but the operations part seems to be lacking. And I know there's a giant interest in that now. I hear it on other programs, and then, with programs like this that are, brought to you, you could hopefully gain a little more knowledge and go, yeah, this is the way I heard some railroaders on this show, and this is what they told us they were doing. And it's just nice that you're able to do that and take the time, John, out of your busy day and have us on this great program.
Well,
and we're here to bring the excitement, so never think you're going to be bored.
I will take that as an excuse to thank you guys for being here, because, I mean, not everybody knows someone who's willing to share that information. So I really, and I'm sure I speak for Murph as well, when I say that I really appreciate your guys' time and taking that time out of your very busy retirement respectively, to come hang out with us and inform us, because it's fun. And,
It is fun.
Yeah. And we like to, give the knowledge out too. And hopefully, we like to see things, to operate on model railroads a lot more realistically. And, it's not the Addams family, and so it's fun to do it. And, once again, and I do want to say, I know John doesn't like to talk about it, but John has Patreon. If you can support me, just look it up and help him out in his programming, because it'll keep coming. And his wife's calling him, but support John through Patreon, and Cindy with their wonderful work here. And there's different levels of it, but it's a few dollars here. Maybe get more like I do, the large, vast amounts of money. But
look, Mike is signing up right now.
I really want to say that. I know John doesn't like to have a fundraiser, but someday we're gonna have a 24-hour telethon on this channel and just talk about trains for 24 straight hours. That would be interesting, right?
Could be. Depends who's talking, I guess.
She's asking if we're there yet.
Okay.
We're about to leave.
Okay, well we're gonna have to call it, because Mike's wife's driving to a restaurant.
Yeah, the train master's breathing down my neck.
Yeah, so we're gonna
time to go. Hey, time to go to Beans.
Time to go to Beans.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, guys.
It was
later.
fun. It was fun.
Oh man,
Catch you later.
that is too much. Well, and then there were just two of us. So
That was fun.
yeah, I mean, it's funny, when we first started, I'm kind of like, what are these guys going to talk about? And I found all of it interesting. So that's a
It was
bonus.
not what I expected. I thought it was going to be hand signals and
Oh, no, the only hand signal we cared about was going to Beans.
that's true. That worked.
So Murph, we're going to have to do that when we do that op session here in a couple of weeks. We'll do our own
Okay.
Beans.
Sounds good.
So, anyway, I guess that's it then. Unless there's anything else you wanted to mention, Murph, I'll just end the stream.
Nope, that'll do it.
Okay. Thank you very much for being here, and I'll talk to you in a minute. Thanks, everybody, for watching.